So Andy Serkis's Animal Farm is maybe one of the worst adaptations of George Orwell's classic novel. Now, look, kids can handle reading Animal Farm. And sure, it's a dark book, and children are not going to directly trace the allegory to Stalin's rise mid-World War II, but the framing of a dictatorship through a pig's hypocritical governance is easy to read. I have enough faith in kids that can read and digest that story that watching it being contorted into a family-friendly animated movie is it's just a gross commercialization of George Orwell's book. This is an insult to its young audience, especially for not having the CGI guts to proceed with the radical revisions that it wants to have. So, director Andy Serkis seemed to approach this material with more thought put into the animal antics than the allegories. It's a cartoon with running jokes about sheep that repeat themselves, snarky roosters, and farting pigs. Even with the familiar characters and quotes from the book, you can feel the kid-friendly nature coding the story, where booze is referred to as naughty juice. So after a revolt against the farmer, Jones is portrayed as more comical than revolutionary, complete with a rap song that mentions Old MacDonald. It's odd choice. We get the familiar staging of the thoughtful pig Snowball, voiced by Laverne Cox, promoting a farm with equality, and the greedy pig Napoleon, played by Seth Rogen, essentially rewriting those laws of equality. Rather than having the children watch the rise and fall of a tyrant, the movie introduces the plucky pig of Lucky, who points out the obvious inconsistencies in Napoleon's logic, while also being drawn to the perks of such a system. And in case that wasn't enough, the film is also narrated by the horse Boxer, voiced by Woody Harrelson, which, in addition to serving as an embodiment of the working class, he's also the narrator, which is a very odd choice if you're familiar with what happens to Boxer in the book. And more or less the same events happen in the film the way that they do in the book, which makes his narration very baffling at times. So, considering Orwell's earnestness in his writing, this adaptation is just a tonal nightmare. Moments of levity are grossly depicted through ho-hum punchlines and needle drops, sometimes literally gross, with Napoleon's farting while talking about freedom. Even Seth Rogen's iconic laugh is exhausted to the point where even the script is mocking it. The music choices are just strange, as when the temptation of the food that the animals are getting, that's meant to be framed as selling out, is punctuated by the theme song from The Price is Right. It's like, what are you doing here? And then there are scenes of animals tragically dying off screen, and it's lessened by scenes of the pigs partying it up in the farmhouse, with pop music and playing with cool gadgets, just making it seem like the pigs are fun to hang out with and just, having a ball and not stressing the darkness of the situation. The passages of the book that are quoted in the movie run in sharp contrast to the rest of the dialogue, which waters down the talk about mankind and greed and authoritarianism into very childish punchlines. The biggest crime with a movie like this is how it shifts the allegory away from communism and into the more modern concern of capitalism. And that shift, it could be interesting if it weren't if it weren't pursued in such a tiresome manner and with a hypocritical conclusion. So driving home more of the capitalist critique is the inclusion of the corrupt human CEO of Frida Pilkington, voiced by Glenn Close, working alongside her accounting cohort of Whymper, played by Steve Buscemi. And those familiar with the book will note that Pilkington was one of the many farmers that Napoleon dealt with, known for being too laid back and letting his farm suffer. Frida, by comparison, has built a cold and efficient operation for power generation and animal harvesting, where her problems are not the dire state of her land, but a lack of money. And just, it feels like too much of a cartoonish depiction of a greedy CEO. And just, how I wish, this film includes a Cybertruck, and how I wanted to see it falter and burst into flames, or watching her AI and her drones just malfunction and just reveal how ineffective this technology is, that the animals would want to turn away from it, but no such luck. Frida just remains as the stock villain with just tech mogul tantalizations and nothing else, nothing more than that. So any hope of a compelling restructuring of the material just tumbles off a cliff when the film reaches the point where the book ends. So you might know the scene I'm talking about, where the animals watch the humans and the pigs cavort with each other, and they start looking at them. It's like, I can't tell the difference between pig and man. But fortunately, or unfortunately for us, Lucky is there to make the distinction and realizes, no, we need to lead our own revolution against Napoleon, which just results in a silly attempt to make the pig look bad, to make Napoleon look bad, and dismantle his monstrous new dam project. The resulting chase and battle between Lucky and Napoleon is not one of a failed socialist revolution biting back against the monstrous elements of late-stage capitalism, but just a battle between a noble pig and a greedy pig. But the movie pulls back on its messaging, with Lucky stating that the lesson learned is that we should help people not because we have to, but because we have to want to. The fact that Napoleon refused to help the starving animals is written off not as a failure of going against equality, but as just being a case of one bad apple. And while the book ended with a warning of unquestioning communist devotion, the movie ends with the hopeful suggestion that capitalism just has a few more kinks to work out before we can get that faulty equality feature working. Just we need to keep working on it. So don't worry about capitalism. It's like, if you're going to make the film anti-capitalist, go all the way. Make it more of a dire warning. Stress the evils of it, and focus. There are correlations between that and the book that are not taken advantage of here. And the film just kind of settles into having these silly little wacky animal antics in case like the kids get bored with this story about corrupting power, which, yeah, why would kids like that, So in the same way that Napoleon rewrites the commandments of animalism, Andy Serkis has rewritten Animal Farm into a hideous distortion that betrays Orwell's messaging. This movie falls back on mere fluff in how it diverges from the allegories of communism, while at the same time pulling back on its capitalist critique before something profound is reached. And all we're left with is a film that showcases the wacky stuff that animals can do if they control the farm, posed in a way that would be a gag on 30 Rock for being such a terrible idea. And kids deserve better than this. Just read the book, kids. It's not that long, and it's far more entertaining than the mindless mash of pig and poop jokes that this film throws at you. So, yeah, this is just an insulting animated film that goes against what Orwell wrote, and what it tries to revise, it does not have the guts to go ahead and make it anti-capitalist when it really should. And it just ends up becoming this kind of very liberal stance on capitalism. It's just vile to watch Animal Farm being contorted into this family-friendly CGI film that is just too chicken shit to confront real issues of authoritarianism. So yeah, I really despised Andy Serkis's Animal Farm.